Welcome back to Hannity. The millions of Duck Dynasty fans tune in each week to watch the Robertson family have reason to smile tonight. Late last week, the A&E network announced the family patriarch, Phil, would be back on the show after temporarily suspending him for comments he made about his personal position on homosexuality in an interview with GQ magazine. After announcing the news, Phil's son, Willie Robertson, wrote on Twitter, quote, "Back to work, so proud of all the fans of the show and family. Old Phil may be a little crude, but his heart is good. He's the real deal." But not everyone is happy that Phil will be back on the air. Glad emailed Fox News a statement that reads, quote, "Phil Robertson should look African American and gay people in the eyes and hear about the hurtful impact of praising Jim Crow laws and comparing gay people to terrorists. If dialogue with Phil is not part of the next steps, then A&E has chosen profits over African American and gay people, especially its employees and viewers." Joining me now with reacting to this and much more are radio talk show hosts Richard Fowler and Dana Lash. So to start off, Dana, I'm pretty sure I never heard Mr. Robertson refer to Jim Crow laws, and I'm pretty sure he never compared gay people to terrorists. Are people putting words in his mouth again?
No, Katie, absolutely. I don't know where anyone is getting this Jim Crow anything, because if they read the same interview that I read and the same interview that you read in GQ magazine, he didn't mention any of that. If anything, he was getting at identity politics, which the left loves to use instead of talking about issues of substance. That's the only thing that anybody could get out of it, except, of course, the left. This is GLAAD trying to use this as a deflection because they have an expiration date and they overreached. They got caught. They've received their biggest backlash that they've ever received. And I think that maybe they finally learned that that outrage is a poor catalyst for change. It really is.
So, Richard, A&E is getting a lot of heat still from GLAAD, and GLAAD wants them to have a dialogue with Phil Robertson. But is there ever going to be a dialogue of tolerance and diversity when it comes to sitting down with Christians and maybe having a little more tolerance for their points of view?
Well, listen, I think Phil could say what he wants to say. At the end of the day, I think that the folks at A&E and GLAAD and the folks at the NAACP and all the other organizations that spoke out against Phil have the right to say that some of the language is offensive. In the GQ article in particular, he talks about how no African American came up to him and said that Jim Crow was a bad thing during the Jim Crow era.
He never said Jim. No,
he definitely said during the Jim Crow era, African Americans were doing pretty well. That's exactly what the quote said.
That is not what he said. Nope, that is not what he said.
Did you read the same interview that we read?
Listen,
Dana,
where in the interview did he say Jim Crow?
We could sit here all day.
We can't sit here all day. If you don't want to talk about the facts, then what's the point of having a discussion?
I'm trying to talk about the facts, Dana, and the facts are we can sit here all day and folks can
defend him on a false quote. Where did he say Jim Crow,
Phil Robertson if they would like.
Where did he say Jim Crow?
He said it in the GQ article.
Richard,
it's in the text of the article.
Here's the thing. You can talk about this all day, whether you think it was a bad thing or not to say, but you cannot put words in his mouth, and you cannot quote him as saying something he did not say. Dana, going back to you real quickly. This seems like, we talk about the culture battle, the culture wars.
Right.
This seems like a culture war that we need to be involved in, and that the Conservative Party actually won. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think they absolutely did. And it's not just conservatives. I think it's people who just realize that outrage for outrage's sake is ridiculous. I mean, we've had torches and pitchforks raised, I don't know how many times, just in the past couple of weeks by the left. It's amazing to me that you can simply cite scripture and people are going to be up in arms over it. And I really hope that Christians finally get the message that they outnumber the squeaky wheels who really aren't for equality because they want to suppress any speech that doesn't include complete and total acceptance and submission. I hope that Christians realize when you stick on principle, Dana, you can win.
Dana,
and when you don't make up quotes like what Richard did, you know.
Listen, I'm a Christian just like everybody here else on this panel, and I find
don't bear false witness, Richard.
No, wait a minute. If you listen to the Bible very clearly, Jesus hung out with the prostitutes, the tax collectors, and all of those individuals. And Jesus is the Jesus of love, never a Jesus of anger. Never a Jesus of anger, and the language that Phil used was hateful language, angry language, and that language can't be tolerated.
Okay, let's take a look back at the quoting again. Let's remember that Phil Robertson said, "We don't judge them, we never judge them, we only leave that up to God." Is that hateful, Richard?
he continues on in the interview to talk about what's the difference of a man with a vagina and a man who doesn't like a vagina. The language is so hateful and so ratchet, I won't even bring it up on television.
The term vagina is hateful. As a woman, I find that offensive, Richard.
No. Wait, whoa. Don't do it. Don't do that, Dana. Don't go ahead and pick.
Copulatory organ.
So
no,
Dana,
don't go ahead and put.
I'm not
Wait a
making
minute
up
now.
what you said,
Look,
Richard.
I'm talking about the paragraph in which he talks about men who don't happen to like vaginas. That part is particularly offensive.
Okay, so
and that is why
Dana means
reacted.
some language that the
horror.
left is the party of, the side of the outrage. Everything's so outrageous, right? Of course, when it comes to anything, it seems like they could never be outraged about anything, right, Dana? Why would they ever be outraged about using crass language that they use all the time?
It's almost like Phil Robertson sat on a panel from a network that nobody watches near enough as much as they watch Fox and mocked a black baby for being adopted by a white family, like a bunch of people MSNBC did with the Romney family. It's almost like they're outraged, like Phil Robertson did something of that, but he didn't.
Dana.
Richard, you get the last word.
I'm pointing out.
Can we just talk about Phil Robertson? I never once mixed apple and oranges. We're talking about Phil Robertson's language.
We're almost out of time. Richard, you get the last word.
Thank you, Katie. We're talking about Phil Robertson and his hateful language. The reason why African Americans are offended and the reason why GLAAD is offended and the LGBT folks are offended is because after he made this hateful language, A&E made the decision for capitalist gain to keep him on. A&E could do whatever they would like. They can keep him on the air or they can't keep him on the air. They've chosen to keep him on the air, so when they don't have African American viewers and they don't have LGBTQ folks
the bottom
viewers,
line is the people who are protesting wanting him to be off the show weren't watching Duck Dynasty before and they're not watching it now. Richard, Dana, thank you so much for being here. And a quick programming note, make sure to tune in tomorrow night for Fox News' New Year's Eve coverage. At 9 p.m., Kimberly Guilfoyle and Bob Beckel kick things off. And then Bill Hemmer and Elizabeth Hasselbeck take things over until the ball drops. Some of the Duck Dynasty stars will help them bring in the new year. And we'll also be keeping an eye out for your New Year's Eve tweets and photos. Use the hashtag FoxNews2014 and it might just make it on the air. And remember, that's all tomorrow night starting at 9 p.m. And coming up, did your hard-earned tax dollars really fund a pornography research project? Find out next. Plus, the mainstream media is back to attacking Governor Sarah Palin, all because she dared to put up a Christmas tree. Our Great American Panel tackles these topics and more right after the break.